So it's Late Night Graham Torrington on the BBC across the Midlands. I'm here Sunday to Thursday, 10 till 1. One of the things I'm talking about tonight on the programme are bucket lists. Do you know what a bucket list is? Well, if you've been watching Coronation Street over the past few nights, you'll know the character Hayley Cropper. She's being diagnosed with incurable cancer and will soon be embarking on a series of adventures as part of a bucket list, and her list of things that she wants to do before she dies. So this has got me thinking tonight on the programme. How popular are bucket lists? Do you have a bucket list? And if you do, what's on it? Share your own thoughts, share your own story on this tonight on Late Night Graham Torrington. I know it may be a difficult phone call to make, but I'd really like to hear your own story. Get on the phone, give me a call right now. 08453 009956. If you're texting me, it's 81333. Start your text with GT. And emails, please, to gt@bbc.co.uk. So do you have a bucket list? What's on it? And what have you managed to achieve on that bucket list as well? I'm joined now by Stephen Sutton, who's an 18-year-old guy from Burntwood who can probably identify with Hayley's predicament, as he's recently found out that he has cancer, and like Hayley, his cancer is incurable. Stephen, thanks very much indeed for joining me on the programme tonight.
Lovely to be here.
When did you start feeling unwell?
About 3 years ago. It's actually my cancerversary. It's about 3 years post-diagnosis this Friday.
Right.
And then leading up to that, I had about 6 months of crippling symptoms.
Okay.
And then I underwent surgery, and since then I've undergone chemotherapy, more surgery, radiotherapy, more chemotherapy, and then about another 5 lots of surgery.
Heck of a lot you've been through then over the last 3 years.
Just a lot. So yeah, I've been through a lot, but more significantly, I've learned a lot.
Okay. What have you learned in the last 3 years?
I've just generally learned to make the most out of my life. And that's one of the ways I've decided to try and do that, is by writing this bucket list.
Okay. At what point did you put that list together?
Early on in the year, so about November time last year is when I found out my disease was incurable. And then there's kind of a bit of intermediate time after that where I wasn't kind of sure what I wanted to do in my life. And then I decided I needed a kind of change, something to focus on. And then I wrote this bucket list. And when you're living with a kind of life-limiting condition, there's amount of kind of uncertainty involved in everything you do. So having a list, having something to focus on, for me was absolutely brilliant.
Okay, so you went through 2 years of treatment before you were given the devastating news last November about the future for you, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. That must have been a heck of a day when that was delivered to you, that news.
Yes. As I've been kind of fighting cancer for a long time, and in a kind of way, I've got used to it, but nothing does prepare you for the fact of being told your disease is incurable. But the way it is for me, I see it as that is what it is. I can't change that. The only thing I can change is how I react to it.
How long have the doctors given you?
I haven't asked, because I don't see the point in measuring life in terms of time anymore. I'd rather measure it in terms of what I achieve. And so in whatever time I may have left, I am just trying to achieve as much as I can, because I think that's much more important.
How sure are they that they can't cure your cancer?
Very, essentially. Doctors don't throw words about like incurable all the time, and unfortunately I've got this kind of predicament. Currently I've only got a tumour in my leg, but the only way they could get rid of that is by amputating, but they think I'm so high risk of getting it elsewhere because it's spread a couple of times already and being removed and it's had high staging. They're certain it's going to come back. I've got some scan results on this Friday, coming up, which will reveal if it is anywhere else, but I have found 2 lumps on the back of my calf, 2 new lumps, and realistically they are tumours.
Most lads of your age will possibly have just come through the summer, maybe getting A-level results, and thinking about going on to university and thinking about their life in front of them. We've had a great summer weather-wise this summer. What have you been focusing on this summer, and have you taken A-levels or have you done GCSEs?
Originally, I was very academic, doing my kind of GCSEs, A-levels, like a normal teenager, despite of my treatments and kind of in spite of my cancer. I was kind of AA star student, aiming to study medicine, and I was on course for that. But when I released the bucket list, my whole kind of life changed. The focus turned onto that, and the focus also turned on to fundraising and my page called Stephen's Story. And since that, I've just been non-stop busy doing various things. So this summer, for example, yesterday I just got back off a plane, been in Florida for 2 weeks, and then the day before I was in Florida, I was at the festival. The day before that I was go-karting. The week before that I was in Top Gear. The day before that I was being driven in I think it was a Rolls Royce. And it's just one thing to another. And alongside this, there's been loads of fundraising events. So while I was away, there was a charity fun day being organised, and the week before that, there was a charity music festival. And I've just been busy. I've kind of just moved my kind of efforts from what I would have put into normal things like studying into this new life of mine.
I noticed, and I've got your bucket list in front of me here, that your number one on your bucket list is to raise £10,000 for the Teenage Cancer Trust. Why is that at number one?
Because they are a charity that have helped me hugely throughout my journey, to the extent that I can talk as kind of openly, as positively about my experience as I can now. Their remit is that a teenager shouldn't stop being a teenager just because they've got cancer, and they help me in lots of different ways, to the extent I now believe that, and that's one of the reasons I've got my bucket list. I'm doing all the things I'm doing despite my cancer.
It's really interesting, some of the things I see on your list here. One is host a charity come dine with me dinner party for friends. Have you achieved that yet?
Yes, it was actually a come dine with Steve dinner party is what I called it. But yeah, it went down very, very well.
Having a charity waxing and head shave as well, is that something you've achieved so far?
That hasn't happened yet, but it can easy enough. It's just I've had so much on, I haven't had time to think about some of the things on the list, but I'll get it done easy enough in time.
What about going to a carnival in Brazil?
Yes, there is a few things on the list like that. So there's go to a carnival in Brazil, there's go to Machu Picchu in Peru, and go to Australia. I'm going to describe those as kind of like longer holidays and bigger things on my list. And kind of unfortunately or fortunately, I haven't had much time to think about them because, as I say, I've been so busy recently with charity events, helping others, that I haven't had time to think for myself.
What's the one thing on your list, apart from raising money, which obviously is such a big thing for you, and I can understand that. What's the one thing on your list that you definitely want to do?
This is a thing now. There isn't anything really specific I want to do anymore. The reason being that I am quite happy, personally. I've done lots of things on the list. I've done lots of cool stuff that hasn't been on the list, and I'm quite happy. The support I've got recently since starting Stephen's Story has been absolutely immense. So I just really want to help others, and the fundraising is probably the easiest way to do that.
Stephen, there'll be people listening to this right now who are just in awe of what you're saying to me on the programme tonight. You know, we quite often hear stories of people moaning, groaning, complaining. I do all the time. So do everybody else. Get up in the morning and think, oh, it's Monday morning. Oh, here we go again. You know, schools have started back this week. We're coming towards the end of the summer. People are going, dark nights and all the rest of it. And I've heard a few people moaning and groaning. Do you know what? I'm not hearing you moaning and groaning.
What I found is that kind of moaning doesn't achieve anything, and as like I said earlier, I just want to achieve as much as possible. I found that positivity leads to better outcomes, So I'm just trying to be as positive as possible about the situation I'm unfortunately in.
You talk about something that's going to come up on Friday. Do you try and mask what's happening to you by getting yourself involved in this sort of stuff, or not?
Yes, to a certain extent. I've always found it's better to be busy than to be bored. If you're bored and sitting around thinking too much, it's so easy to overthink things, and perhaps overthink things to the extent you think about things more negatively. So I keep myself busy, keep myself doing as much as I can, and it's all kind of underpinned by the fundraising, because the fundraising really, really helps me, because I find the best way to help myself is to try and help others.
What do you want your legacy to be?
I haven't really thought about that. I want my legacy to be fun. In all the fundraising events I do, I emphasise there's got to be some fun in fundraising. I don't want my story just to be a sob story. I don't want to just be the person who's had incurable cancer and raised a lot of money because people feel sorry for him. I want to be the guy who worked as hard as all the people who fundraised around him, and the guy who was genuinely a laugh and a nice person to speak to.
Well, from the second I actually phoned you this evening and you picked up the phone in such a happy way, I knew that's the way the conversation was going to go. I really did. And you know what? Just what you've described there to me in what you want your legacy to be was how it started with the conversation right to the end of the conversation as well. You are an inspiration, Stephen. I know you don't want to hear that, but you are. And I just wish and hope that you're going to be around for as long as you want to be.
Fingers crossed.
All right. You take it easy, Stephen. Thank you very much indeed for telling your story tonight on the programme.
Thank you for having me again.
All right. That's Stephen Sutton there. What an inspiration. Maybe you'd like to share your thoughts on what Stephen had to say there. Has he spurned you on to doing something a bit positive in your life? It's Late Night Graham Torrington on the BBC across the Midlands. I'm talking about bucket lists tonight on the back of Stephen's story.